Hi, everybody. Welcome to Musicians Peer Support. Thank you so much for joining us. Today we're welcoming Jon Altham again. Jon, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. You?
Good. I'm very excited about this week. We've been having really great reviews. So thank you so much to everybody who's been watching the replays. Jon, are we digging into this week? Are we doing a wrap up? Maybe we do a little bit of a. I mean, gosh, there's been so much good stuff so far. What would you like to do? You want to wrap up a little bit of what we talked about so far?
Yeah, I've got a few ideas. I've done this side project whilst going through this where I've kind of written reflection letters or stuff, effectively like a letter to artists for each chapter. I thought I would maybe start by just grounding one, which really takes us back to the first chapter. And then I've got one at the end, which really wraps up the chapter that we're going to go into today. Maybe that might be a good place to start. I'm also open if there's any thoughts that have gone on since the last session and people have questions, happy to dive into that off the bat as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That sounds amazing. Yeah, I'd love to hear that. And also, yes, for the people in the room, please feel free to type your questions in the chat or you can raise your hand. And then people who are watching the replay, questions are welcome. So please join us on a Sunday if you're available, or you can comment. And we also have some links for you if you wanted to reach out to Jon directly. But yeah, questions are welcome. Thank you for that, Jon. Appreciate it.
Pleasure. Cool. So does anyone have any questions initially, or would you like me to dive straight in? I'm easy.
Let's dive in.
Cool. All right. I'll start off with the first letter. As I said, it's the foundational one, and then we'll go straight into chapter four, which is about ownership and leverage. The main focus of that discussion is how can we protect and grow what we create. That's the main theme there. Just to check, can you hear me okay? Fantastic. Okay, so um, the chapter four is also pretty short, similar length to the others, but hopefully, as the theme has gone with all the other chapters, they're pretty layered and we can really dive into it in detail. And there is a diagram in there as well, which I'm sure will bring up some questions. So excited to get into that. So the first letter, it's like a foundational reflection. Before deals, before audiences. This concerns sound, identity, and time. Most artists start by looking outward. What is working? What is trending? What is rewarded? The search is understandable. It's also destabilizing. Early work is not judged on clarity. It's judged on novelty. Those are not the same. Sound is not found by choice. It's revealed by repetition. When you repeat under no pressure, when you return to what you were doing without reward, what survives? Boredom. That is signal. Identity forms slowly across failed tracks, across unused ideas, and across work that no one hears. This stage produces no income, no leverage, no validation. It produces something else, consistency. Most artists exit this phase too early. They optimize for response. They compress time. That compression has a cost. When sound is borrowed, identity fractures. When identity fractures, decisions become reactive. Reactive artists chase outcomes, whereas foundational artists build inputs. Inputs compound quietly. Skill, taste, constraint. Constraint sharpens choices. Unlimited possibility dilutes them. Your foundation is built by limits, genre edges, the tools you know deeply, themes you return to. That is not branding, it is orientation. And without it, every opportunity feels urgent, every opinion feels authoritative, and every pivot feels necessary. That's not freedom, that is drift. The governing rule is simple. Foundations precede scale. Do not rush coherence, do not outsource taste, and do not mistake attention for direction. The early years are for structure, not exposure. And if you skip this stage, You carry the cost forward. If you complete it, everything later moves faster. I'm going to leave that there.
Yeah, that's really great, John. Reactional versus foundational, and really putting the right things in place for a successful future. And this is kind of the start of embracing those principles and
Yes.
really kind of internalizing them and understanding them in a way that means something to us in our own individual examples. Because and just so for people, now that I've been through a couple weeks of this, what I find happening with me is some of the concepts come in to my own life, and I start to think about what we talk about and these philosophies and what that means for me
Mm.
in that everyday decision that happens to be on my desk at that particular time. So it's really cool that, it's kind of like what I say about piano lessons is like we're reading it now and we're hearing this stuff now, but it's going to take time for it to really play out
Yeah.
in our own lives.
Yeah.
That's really, and really nicely put there, John. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Let's dive straight into it.
Yes. What do we have this week?
So this is the ownership and leverage. We'll start off here, and then I'm sure loop into any questions. So why control shapes every outcome in the creative economy? The power you already have. Most artists underestimate the power they already hold. They believe leverage comes only after success, after the numbers and recognition. The truth is that leverage begins at the moment you create something of value. The system only works when artists forget that fact. Every song, every composition, every performance carries ownership from the moment it is made. That ownership is quiet, often unseen, but it exists. The problem is that many give it away before they understand what it is worth. Ownership is not a reward, it is the foundation. You cannot be independent without it. You cannot negotiate effectively without it, and you cannot build wealth without it. The moment you protect your ownership, you begin to create leverage. So, what does ownership really mean? Ownership is not just legal paperwork, it's a mindset. It means knowing where your value sits and ensuring that every exchange is fair. You can sell distribution rights without selling identity. You can license usage without surrendering control. And you can collaborate without disappearing in the credits. Every artist must learn to see ownership as a spectrum, not a single choice. You can share parts of your work temporarily while still retaining the core. That is the art of leverage, to collaborate without compromise. We're going to loop back into this diagram in a second, but from left to right, you've got a control and risk matrix, I guess. Left being less control, higher risk. And then as you go up on the other side of it, you have more control as you go into the full ownership. Effectively, it breaks down the 5 common areas where deals are often made within the industry. On the left-hand side, you've got work for hire, then we've got licensing, revenue share deals, joint ventures, and then full ownership on the right-hand side. Your risk massively reduces as you go further right. What we often find, and I'm happy to dive into this in a lot of detail today, if helpful. But on the left-hand side, this is where artists often start. That could be, you start off as that session musician, you're being asked to do a piece of work for free because they need it for a project, and they need your songwriting skills or whatever. But because it's a big opportunity, it might be work for hire. You don't have any rights. or control as a result of that. The far end of that is actually, no, I retain all of my rights. I keep my right to share. I keep my publishing or whatever that may be. And then we go into that together. And as a result, you build that ownership catalog and assets that you can leverage later down the line. So I'm going to hold that there, but happy to dive into that in a lot of detail. The takeaway effectively is that you can share value without surrendering control. And this is just an optionality of different options that you have from left to right throughout the industry. So the two kinds of leverage. There are two main kinds of leverage within the creative economy. One, intellectual leverage. This is the strength of your catalog, your skill, and your consistency. The more you create and register properly, the more negotiating power you hold. A well-managed catalog is a portfolio, not just a collection of songs. And two, relational capital or relational leverage. This is the trust you build through reliability, communication, and integrity, much like we talked about in the prior chapter. People want to work with those who deliver without drama and who protect both their time and others. The combination of both creates balance. Intellectual leverage gets you noticed. Relational leverage gets you invited back. The takeaway here is that you can't do one without the other. As it's kind of noticed, it mentions in here, the intellectual leverage is your value. It's what gets you in the room initially. However, the relational aspect of this is what really gets you invited back. So you might be a great person to work with, but ultimately, if the value, the intellectual leverage is not there, they may not continue to work with you. Vice versa, you could have a great catalog, you could be highly skilled, but if you're not trustworthy, again, it all collapses, much like the capital stack that we mentioned in the prior chapter. The art of saying no. Every creative career reaches a point where saying yes to everything becomes a threat. In the beginning, opportunity feels scarce, and the instinct is to accept every offer, collaboration, or deal. But eventually, you realize that not every opportunity is aligned, and not every partner shares your vision. Learning to say no is not arrogance, it is maturity. You're not rejecting people, you're protecting purpose. Every yes should serve your long-term coherence, and if a deal confuses your structure or dilutes your ownership, it costs more than it pays. Saying no gives your yes more value. Fair exchange. A fair deal benefits both sides. It balances contribution and reward. Too many artists sign agreements without truly understanding what they are giving in return for what they receive. A fair exchange asks three main questions. 1. Does this agreement create mutual growth? Does it respect my ownership and contribution? And thirdly, does it align with the future that I'm building? If any answer is no, pause, ask for clarity, and seek counsel. Contracts are not a test of truth, they're an act of clarity. Negotiating without fear. Fear is the artist's greatest weakness in negotiation. It whispers that if you ask for too much, your offer will disappear. That belief is how industries maintain control. The key takeaway here is negotiation is not a conflict, it is communication. It is the process of defining value clearly so that both sides can win. When you know your numbers, you can negotiate from calm. And when you understand your rights, you negotiate from confidence. That is, the most effective negotiators are not the loudest, they are the most clear. Preparation is your quiet leverage. Before any conversation, know your worth, know your walk away point, and your alternatives. The one who is prepared does not need to persuade, they simply present the facts. Keep organized records of your catalogs, contracts, and communication. Professionalism builds leverage faster than charisma. And when you walk into a room with clarity, you no longer need to chase for approval. You bring structure, and structure commands respect. The healthiest deals are partnerships. not lifelines. Partnerships adds value to both sides. A dependency drains one to feed the other. So before entering any agreement, ask yourself, would I still want this partnership if I did not need it? True partners empower your autonomy, not your attachment. If someone requires your confusion to stay in control, they are not a partner, they are a liability. Partnerships built on transparency last. Those built on imbalance eventually collapse. Integrity is the most tested when you have leverage. The industry will tempt you to compromise, to sign faster, to cut corners, to forget the principles that got you there to begin with. But leverage without integrity turns into manipulation. The purpose of ownership is not to dominate, it's to build stability and trust. When you protect your integrity, you protect your future collaborations. And people remember how you handle success more than how you handle struggle. Integrity compounds like interest. It quietly multiplies your influence over time. And before we get into the final letter and any questions, the key takeaways are this. Ownership is not a gift. It is a responsibility. Effectively, and you'll hear me talk about this more moving forward, it's about stewardship. And that word is very, very important. You're a steward of the assets under your management. Leverage is not a force. It is clarity and preparation. Every partnership must be fair, aligned, and transparent. And the more calm you are in negotiation, the stronger your position actually becomes. Integrity is leverage that cannot be taken away. When you master your ownership and leverage, you stop chasing permission and you start choosing your future. I'm going to dive into the next letter.
Great.
Okay. So this letter concerns leverage, where it comes from and where it disappears. I've seen the moment leverage shifts. It is quiet. It happens at signature. Before that point, you have options. You can wait, you can say no, you can change terms. But after that point, you cannot. Most deals look balanced at the front, access for rights, support for ownership, momentum for control. They are not balanced. One side brings labor, the other side brings capital, and capital sets the clock. Deadlines appear, windows close, pressure is applied. Urgency is manufactured, scarcity is implied, and time is shortened. And this is where leverage is lost. Leverage does not come from belief or confidence or talent. Leverage comes from retained options. An option is the ability to decide later, to wait for more information, or to keep the asset uncommitted. Assignments remove options, and licenses preserve them. An assignment ends a decision. A license rather defers it. In many contracts, the difference is buried. One word, one paragraph. Perpetual. That word fixes the outcome. Even if success arrives later, even if the value multiplies, time then works against you. Every year strengthens the owner, not the originator. And this is why Chapter 4 exists. Not to teach negotiation, to teach purely positioning. If you need the deal, you have no leverage. If the deal needs the asset, you do. Build leverage before the room, before the email, before the draft. Control your burn, control your timeline, and control your optionality. The governing rule here is simple. Leverage lives before signature, and once you trade it away, it does not return. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, John. Not what we typically hear.
No.
And it's very empowering. very empowering. Preparation is quiet leverage, and that can speak volumes. Again, you can write books on just that.
Yeah,
Um, and then leverage without integrity is manipulation. And
absolutely.
and,
Yeah.
and strong and powerful words, and that is just like I've known that to be true in many layers of my life. Um, Interestingly, though, John, when I was trying to describe what I thought integrity was,
Mhm.
only emotion, only a hand motion is what I could come up with, and it was it was kind of just this. Um, could you talk about what integrity is? Could you tell us
Sure.
just a little bit what in your mind what that is?
Yeah, I think there's two parts. I would say there's the internal and external integrity. I would define the internal integrity in its whole. Integrity is, in my view, staying true to yourself, your values, what you believe in, and being transparent in the way that you conduct yourself. So at its core, it's really a truth, right? The internal side of it is, are you being, do you have integrity to yourself? Which I think often we think about integrity as being external. Have I got good integrity to others and to a deal, right? That's important. But if you don't have integrity to yourself, which is the self-respect, the self-value, then actually a lot of it falls apart. It's effectively that foundation that makes you you, and um, hopefully brings out the human in us, the morals, which is really, really important. So that's the one side of it, and then the external for integrity, as well. Um, it's being honest with the collaborators, being fair and transparent. Um, I've always said, with various partners that I've worked with, over the years, it's I don't mind if something goes wrong. I inevitably expect it, to be honest with you. And if I've learned anything, building things, I fail all the time. I fail every day. And that's normal. It's part of the process. What I don't appreciate is being told so late, and then I you can't do anything about it. And integrity in that respect is, if something's gone wrong, own it. It's about ownership of that decision of like, okay, I made this decision, this happened. Okay. Um, am I going to tell them about it, or am I going to keep quiet? And that's where it really, really gets tested. So I would say yes, one, being true to yourself, but secondly, owning it and just saying, yeah, hands up, yeah, that was me. I take that on. And this is how we're going to move forward.
Yeah.
And it can be hard. It can be really, really difficult because you're like, oh, I feel really nervous about this. I maybe they'll judge me differently, or oh, they might be disappointed in what I did, or in this scenario. Maybe, maybe, but they're going to be way more disappointed if you don't tell them and they find out too late.
Right. That yes, you don't want to do that. Um, we think about it from an artist's perspective where we're kind of on the receiving end, where we kind of get the shorter end of the stick. But we're really blessed in MPS to have people at all levels, ones who wields power as well. And it works both ways. And I've really, really enjoyed meeting people that do have power, and they use it with integrity. And it's really just cool to see. And so it doesn't just go the one way. When you yourself are the one that is, um, you know, has the leverage and you're lacking integrity, you don't want to be the one manipulating as well if you feel like you have an upper hand for whatever reason.
Yeah,
Um, the
yeah,
journey kind of changes as you go in case to
yeah.
case.
It does, and um, it also becomes very clear the partners out there who will go the opposite way and say, you know what, I've got all this power, I've got all this leverage, and I'm going to squeeze it for everything it's got. Unfortunately, over time, either you become across as a bully, you get a name and a reputation, and actually it doesn't align with the people that actually go the other way. Um, So you can almost think of it sometimes as like it is a bit of a longer play, to be honest.
Right.
Sometimes, being that brash person who's, leveraging everything excessively and manipulating, actually their capital gain, for example, might be quite high in the early days. But actually, will that maintain over time? Probably not, because again, the relational capital aspect of it completely falls down. And I just thought, when I was writing this as well, this is all about increasing, your own ownership and leverage and understanding assets and basically the foundation of your career and your values, right? Um, and I just thought reality is this word steward is really, really important. You are a steward of your career. And I came to this honestly because, I've heard so many times from artists who've worked with various artist management managers, and they've been exploited as a result of that. And um, I wasn't necessarily going to bring that up today, actually, but it's top of mind, and the reason being is because um, if you ever sign with a manager, understand that it gains them to see your success happen earlier to some degree because you get the cash flow early, right? But what really, really needs to be recognized and grounded is that they are a steward to you. Like that is so, so important. Like they are stewarding like your asset with you, not for you. And it's a team and it's a collaboration as a result of that. And they are safeguarding your assets for the future. So, and that decision is it's their fiduciary duty to put you first. And unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. But that's where the stewardship is really, really important. I feel like that's the best word to describe their duty and what they really, really need to do to support an artist's career. And but equally, the duty that you have as a business person, founder, CEO of your career, whatever label you choose to have, entrepreneur, um, to steward your creative career and your assets in the right way too. Because, no matter what your career or where it's going to go, it gives you optionality later. And that's super, super important. And you owe it to yourself.
Right. Yeah. It's serving yourself include. I mean, serving others also includes yourself. Um, so I know that doesn't make sense, but you get it. Anyway, John, you had a really cool graphic that maybe we could put back up, and maybe you could zoom in a little bit, and we can kind of just talk a little bit about that. Um, and also, just those of you in the room, if you have questions, feel free to type your questions in the chat. Yeah. Um, work for hire, for some reason, my brain goes to work from home, which is a lot. Work from home, work for hire, no. Um, yeah, and maybe just talk a little bit about, because this is control and risk, and obviously the goal is full ownership.
Yeah.
Um, but like kind of a similar question came up this week in our Patreon sessions, which is, a lot of times artists who are home recording and they're trying to get their songs into licensing, they're signing deals that will say like 60/40,
Sure.
and like, what does that mean, and aren't I supposed to own everything, type of
Yeah.
questions.
Mm.
How does that type of question fit into this graphic?
So in that example, it comes down to revenue share. So like it's okay to, you know, give parts away. And I can run through if you want, I can run through each block if that would be helpful. But yeah, effectively that it leans more towards revenue share. Like you don't have full ownership of it, but you've kind of just decided in that kind of um time that I've decided that I'm going to do a 60/40 here. It's going to benefit me. The trade-off is X, but maybe in the next deal I do, I'm going to go full ownership. Or in the early stages for work for hire, I need the cash flow now because that is going to allow me to do what I need to do next. And it's just a strategic decision. It's like income now, but zero compounding later. I'm okay with that, but it will allow me to move to the next kind of ring down the road. So effectively, like the real key takeaway here is whichever one you're choosing, you're not selling out, and you also don't have to do it alone. You're basically choosing positions on a control spectrum, where you either have more control and more risk, or you have the opposite effectively. So with work for hire, there's no ownership or control. It's the survival position that was described kind of in earlier chapters. Basically, your labor is exchanged for cash. It's that early cash flow. Your rights are fully assigned to someone else, and typically the upside is capped at delivery. Risk is hidden, not rather than removed. And yeah, effectively, once that deal has completed, the artist or musician has no future leverage at all. Um, it's not saying you shouldn't do it. There are times and places where actually it's super valuable, right? But what chapter 4 is effectively saying is like treat this as being acceptable for short-term cash flow, but never as the foundation for your career. Okay, so just swap and change it every so often. And like you said before, sometimes there might be that quick gig, and you're like, you know what, yeah, work for hire, let's do it. It's in terms of ownership, it's probably not going to be exploited too far anyway. Let's get that quick work for hire done, and then I'm just going to continue on to my next thing because it's going to fund my catalog or the system that I'm already building and scale it.
Right, like you were saying, the trade-off is X.
Yeah.
And that's like a big, a real quick way to say that, like, you're really weighing what the value is of what you're getting out of it.
Yeah.
And that could look, you know, in many different ways.
Yeah, exactly. And then in comparison to licensing, you have limited control. It's still quite high risk here. The rights are retained in theory, but the control is constrained basically by the licensing terms. So that's the scope, territory, term, and approval clauses within that specific contract. So effectively, your risk increases as a result of your dependency on the other counterparties because you become more dependent on them. So effectively, the more to the left you are, the more dependent you are on whoever the party is. And also because of how much they can enforce the contracts and the rights in which you've subassigned or sent given elsewhere. Um, so effectively, the takeaway here is that many artists, specifically around licensing, they believe they're independent here, but actually they're still giving away effective control through a very poorly defined license term. So yes, your optionality exists, but in theory, it actually decays if the terms are weak. So the key takeaway here, if you're licensing or yeah, specifically around licensing, really look at your terms more specifically around the scope, territory, term, and the approval clauses within those specific licenses. And to repeat those again, that's the scope, the term, the territory, and the approval clauses. And that will put you in a much better position where your risk somewhat reduces, but your control and visibility of the deal does increase as a result. And then moving across a little bit more, the revenue share, shared control and risk here. This is pretty balanced, and I would say probably, to be honest, it's the first actual structural step that you move away from being like ownership is fully extracted. So cash flow aligns with performance. Rather than delivery. The reason being in the 60/40 example, well, if it all goes well, then, the cash flow aligns really quite nicely to that as a result of it. Control is negotiated rather than surrendered. This is where your negotiating power comes in a little bit more. Yeah, you're able to retain either the 40 or the 60%, whatever was agreed in that specific example. This is really I would class it as the transitional stage, which is why I've put it straight in the middle of the diagram. And it's useful when capital or distribution is required, but it's dangerous if the governance isn't clear. So the upside part is basically the mechanism here is upside participation without full authority. And what I mean by that is, okay, good, you've got a revenue share. Good, I'm going to get some capital in. It's allowed me to distribute what I'm doing to scale because I've done a deal with a major label or independent label or whatever. That's a bit of a revenue share. Great, I'm going to do that. But if the governance is unclear, the terms of what's going on around how it's being exploited, the approval rights, and all this other stuff that goes into all these deals, when actually that could be quite a challenge and things that you need to look at. So whilst having a lawyer is important in all of these phases, the revenue share bit is particularly important because you've got to get that governance side right. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah. Really cool. Really cool, really cool, and very helpful to kind of compartmentalize things in that way. Um, Susie in the chat says, I was in a situation recently when someone wanted me to compose music to their lyrics, but they then wanted to pay an expensive producer to submit to Taxi. I chose to change to a work for hire and not as co-writer since I was not willing to invest 50-50. I don't know if that was the right choice. Part of the issue here, John, is that I remember in Clubhouse days too, was like a lot of these particular situations were that so case to case. There were so many details of any one given situation for us to really like give an accurate assessment as to what went down, what could have happened, what should have happened, and all of that stuff. But I think um, thinking about these things is a really good start. But can you speak to things like that just in general of like, okay, um, I'm being asked to provide this particular part of the music, um, and I can now negotiate or choose work for hire or getting some kind of split with it. You know, who gets what? A lot of the questions are like, who gets what is supposed to go where, and
Yeah.
all of those things. Like, how do you answer questions like that when it's all just kind of this graphic is kind of a little bit of a map to help you decide these types of
Yeah,
things.
exactly. And Susie raised a really, really good point with this. Effectively, the decision that's being made on that spectrum is where are we kind of left to right on this, right? And the deal that was effectively or somewhat being offered was, okay, we'll do a 50-50 invest. I would actually argue that that is actually leaning towards the joint venture side. If it was truly 50-50, both in capital and ownership off the back. Obviously, I don't know all the deal terms, but I would class that as, yeah, we got balance control, we got somewhat lower risk. And if this is something that's clearly going to be exploited in the future, great. For example, use Taxi as an example here where it could be synced. Effectively, if you had a 50-50 co-invest and joint venture, you'd then have control over how that is exploited in the future, and equally then the deal terms of that specific sync placement. So, for example, say a music supervisor turned around and said, "Yeah, love the track. I want it for this, but I want exclusivity." The difference being you could have two people in this deal that are co-owning this record. One who is well read on the industry and one is less read on the industry, and they want to take the deal because they're like, oh, you know what, this is 10 grand. Look, let's grab it. And then you turn around and you're like, no, hang on, hold on a second. We don't want exclusivity, but if we do, we want to limit the term. That's the difference. So with the joint venture in that scenario, it would give you the optionality of control and negotiation to slow things down and say, hang on, does this align with where I want to go? That being said, it increases the admin headache. And if you don't have the capacity at the current time to have that and oversee that asset, then actually going down or going left is better for you. Because in the example that you don't want to go as co-writer, let's go work for hire. That might have been the right strategic decision at your time to get like I said, the quick cash, and that allows you to invest in your career elsewhere because you don't necessarily value it as a massive key asset to your portfolio moving forward, and then you can use that capital to do other things. So, is this a right choice or a wrong choice? Honestly, with I've always come from the angle of, you can only do the best with what you knew at the time because otherwise you wouldn't have made the decision, right? So in this example, I would just class it as on one side, do we want to retain the asset and do we want to have the admin headache to maybe manage that? I would argue if you've got a system, you don't have much about admin headache, but that is one side. Or do you want to get the cash now so that you can inject it to a more valuable part of your career, which aligns with the foundation of where your career is going?
Yeah, can I say quickly?
Yeah.
Part of the reason I asked for this was because there were a lot of changes being asked for,
Yeah.
and I was
Okay.
getting a little bit
Yeah.
tired of this. So I kind of said, well, look, it's this much here, and if you change it, it's this much, and so I laid out the strategy. She was very happy to pay the money,
Mm.
you
So
know.
Susie, thank you so
So
much for that question. Really appreciate you. Yeah, and like I said, it's everything's case to case. It's like hard to tell all the details of each individual deal. So it's really great to hear John's responses that kind of benefit all of us in terms of that. I mean, and when you say going a little bit to the left towards work for hire is what you're saying on the diagram.
Mm.
Um, and going towards full ownership, and that um, I love what you said. It reminds me of what my therapist keeps telling me, which is, you made the best decision at the time with what you were given.
Yeah.
Because I mean, all these factors can change. I mean, there could be six more different things to that particular situation that we don't know about. But the key principles of that's why I love the way that you present it in the book. We're really talking key principles, things that we can apply in if something, well, hopefully not similar, Susie, but something, anything comes up. We have a little bit more of a like a mindset that's prepared for that.
Yeah.
Because to me, it's just even just thinking in this way and you putting it in that order and also the colors, it does help just kind of organize where things are in the sliding scale of all of that stuff.
Yeah, and to note on that as well that um I actually think, if there's different types of exploitation, right? And the other side of the exploitation is the fact that there's edits after edits after edits after edits after edits. And you're like, well, you know what? That's actually draining value away from me. It's not what serves my purpose. And I think actually, given what you said there, I think you made a really good decision. Because, why would you want that draining you? And at least that aligns with me. I have a cutoff where I'm like, look, so many iterations, and then look, we got to stop because it's not adding value, or clearly there's something wrong. We need to have a conversation about this so that we can get this right. But it's also like that way up, right, between is it worth it versus the amount that they're willing to pay, or should we just do the work for hire, kind of get on with it, and then we can all kind of go our separate ways, and everyone's a winner. So yeah, I think ultimately what you did there was you reassessed. You looked at your foundation. Does this align with me? Do I want to continue doing edits? No. If I go 50-50, will those edits get longer? Probably, because I'm now in a co-invest or a joint venture. Yeah, good work. Nicely
Great.
done.
Yeah, and you kind of can consider stepping left or stepping right on that graphic when you're in a situation like that. And
Yeah, and what I would say, if you were to improve that deal in the future, say for example, as something else comes up, what you may want to do is you may want to like dive into the revenue share, right? So you can say, yes, okay, well, let's blend work for hire and revenue share together and say, okay, whatever my fee was, instead of it being the full whack, why don't we do 75% of that total value and I get a royalty off the back end of when it's exploited in the future? Like that would be like, it's a blend deal, but ultimately you don't have to control the asset, but you'll always get a residual income. You get a little bit of ownership. Well, ownership or residuals coming out of that, great. Because you never know. Like it could, be synced in another film in like, 20 years or something. You're like, oh, cool, I've got 10% of that. Wicked. So yeah, that's the only tweak I would have.
yeah, wow. Very cool, very, very cool, John. Okay, so just wondering if anybody else in the room has questions. Anything else that you wanted to cover today, John?
Yeah, I can quickly dive into the joint venture bit and full ownership if that's helpful.
Yes.
Um, and then we should be good. So yeah, the joint venture bit, effectively, yeah, the fourth one along, here, capital distribution rights, they're separated super cleanly or cleaner than they were before. As we kind of described, you're effectively a co-owner, co-invest at that point. Each party contributes defined inputs and shares the defined outputs together. And here, the governance matters more than percentages. What I mean by governance is the legalities, who owns what is the control, what can people say, what people aren't allowed to say from a voting perspective. Think of joint venture and full ownership really is it's a real kind of business deal at that point. And if you are owning this together and it's maybe a separate entity or a business, that's where the governance really, really is important because we touched on it very, very briefly previously, but there are different shares you can have in a business. You don't necessarily have to own all of the business, providing you can vote, and therefore you can have significant influence over how it is exploited in the future. So the key point here for joint ventures, if you take anything away of this, was specifically governance matters more than percentages. Super, super important. And it's really where we get into the point of you're starting to build a durable career because you think that asset is valuable. Cool. I want a slice of that pie. And that's how we move forward with that. And then the full ownership, completely control, minimal risk. Risk is lowest here because of decisions, timing, and exits are internal. And capital can still be accessed, but it is structured around the asset rather than the ownership share specifically. Effectively, it makes the point that ownership does not mean isolation. It means authority at this point. So what I mean by authority then is that you have the negotiating power in order to get the best deal possible later down the line, whether you're leveraging your portfolio for financing or whatever. And as a result, your value compounds because your rights remain intact.
John, can you put that graphic up just one more time for us?
Yeah.
Just in case anybody in the room has questions before we start to wrap it up.
I just realized I was sharing the content's the same, but the diagram's slightly different. So this version is my old test version, and it has a typo at the out on here. The actual version does not. So, yeah, full ownership. That was my bad on the test version.
I
that I'm sharing
barely
with you.
noticed because I'm looking on my phone. Okay, yes, thank you for that. Because joint venture, it sounds fancy, but you explaining it made sense to me. You just hear like, okay, we're gonna do a joint venture. Like, what does that really mean?
Yeah, partnership, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Minimal risk, right? Okay, really good. Thank you so much for showing us that graphic one more time for everybody. Really, really love that. And just, I guess, last call for questions, and also just maybe you can talk about what we're going to talk about next week, John, if you'd like to. But also, as a reminder, we're going to be putting the links to John's website, artistsblueprint.com, because you have some workbooks for us. The worksheets were that was super cool. I haven't done them yet, but I think that's really, really amazing. Susie, yes, you had something?
No, I'm just saying I looked at them and took them to into my thought banks.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yes, excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Yes, so everybody watching the replay, please look at the comments so that you can have access to those resources. Also, just so you know, we are putting these replays up on YouTube for everybody to have access to so that we can reference them forever. So thank you so much for offering that. I really appreciate it. Okay, what's next?
So very quickly, the next workbook is available. I can quickly show you.
Great.
Very because I know we're short on time.
All good. And yes, thank you. It's going to take some time. Probably I'll need to be a little bit more mentally prepared to look at it and just say, all right, I'm going to sit down and do this and really organize. And, you know, it's a lot to think about, but you make it easy. So yes, please explain this to us.
So this follows a pretty similar framework to the prior one. Like chapter 3 was pretty bulky in terms of a workbook, to be honest. But you know, reflecting back through it, I felt that it was really quite detailed and structured, and it kind of really grounded it out quite nicely. So this kind of follows a similar approach. It's 6 pages, I think it is. So yeah, it goes from the initial ownership reality checklist, you know, tick all that apply to you in terms of, you know, how much of control of your masters and publishing you have, all the way into the classic scoring, which is a key theme throughout all of this, is you know, how would you rate your control and ownership through each of these areas, your term awareness on contracts, territory awareness. Again, the point here is really just as reflection points. It's like, okay, I may be on a 2 in terms of my exclusivity exposure. Great. How can I do that? Who do I need to speak to understand more about this? What books do I need to read? Is there a video on YouTube that I can get to, and so I can understand what this means and how I can improve my contracts moving forward? It's not a right and wrong. It's more just about clarity as you go through it. Your rights map, so everything that you control, your leverage drains, you know, the factors that are currently weakening your negotiating position. Is it financial urgency, lack of alternative income? It's really important because sometimes we say yes, we say yes because we have no other choice, right? We can't say no because we need the money. And you know, that's also an important thing to recognize. So if we had an alternative source of income, would we really take that deal? Maybe not. Worth considering. Is it poor legal understanding? Is it weak representation? Are they kind of supporting your best interests? So, are we documented redlining in our contracts, or do we accept the contracts as written? Again, like really, these are specific areas where like your leverage just drains massively. Leverage impact, again, your primary leverage drain, your effect on negotiations, and the effect on long-term control is just a reflection point. Your exposure in contracts, scope creep, assignment risk, audit rights. Are you allowed to audit their work or are you not? 5 is that yes, you can. 1 is you can't at all. That's actually really, really important so that you can hold the rights holder to account. You're always allowed to audit their accounts, usually at your cost, unless you clearly find that there's an error in the audit that you requested, at which case they should start covering a cost for at least the next audit, in my view. But that's where the legalities come in terms of refining those specific clauses in the contracts. Approval power, super important. You could sign a record label deal. It could be everything you ever wanted, but maybe then they sink you into an advertisement that does not align with you and your brand. Super important. Approval power. Can they license it into a advertisement without your say so, yes or no? And where do you sit on that scale? Very, very important. Cash versus control as well. What's the most cash that you've taken as at the expense of control? Super important. And the most control you've protected at the expense of cash. And which trade-off has helped you in the long term and which trade-off has weakened you. Again, nice little reflection points there. This moves you all the way into your leverage position, your 30-day control action plan, and then your structural snapshot summary at the end, which, as I said, we go through all the chapter workbooks by the end of it, and for each one, you'll be able to specifically have a snapshot of every single chapter and how to apply it to your career. And hopefully that helps. So, yeah, before we go into anything else, effectively, the next chapter is the deal blueprint. That's really focused on clarity. And the takeaway on that one will be, how do we negotiate fairly without fear? And there's also another diagram to support us with that discussion too.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that is a lot of really great stuff. I mean, resources and even, yeah, that's so super cool. Thank you so much for that. Um, I think part of it for me is that everything just is so, it's just so much, it's so overwhelming. So for you to put it all together like this and the worksheets just kind of like itemizing things that we just even need to begin to think about, um, it's just really mentally healthy for me because it's just less overwhelming. You
Mm,
know, it's just sometimes just feels like, you know, I can't get my head straight with all of this stuff. Like, I don't know anything about what my assets are and all that stuff. And here it is, just one thing at taking it kind of one thing at a time. So I guess maybe that's one question I'll pose for you as we start to wrap it up, which is, um, what would you say to people who are just kind of like, this is just a lot for me? Like, I like hearing this and it sounds good to me, but like I only have a few songs. Like, I don't know if this, like, should I really be taking it that seriously? You know, it just seems like a lot. I don't know
yeah.
if that makes sense. Yeah. What would you
Yeah,
say?
and I know I've really tried to balance the business overwhelm because it is really overwhelming. Like the first version I did of this was brutal. It was so detailed and it was too much. Um, and yeah, it effectively, like, those workbooks are there to kind of support you,
Yeah.
and to kind of take what you need from it. My takeaway really would be to speak to that person, would be simply take what serves you and discard what doesn't. Simple as that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter which path that you choose. And really to take it right back to its core and the foundation, if you were to just focus on the first kind of chapter and what all that was about, it was about your values, your foundation, who you are, what you want to create. And even if you don't want to build an asset base or whatever it is, finding that foundation will make your art better, and it will allow you to really, really enjoy it and get the best out of it for you and your enjoyment. So yeah, to speak to that person, and to anyone, each time you read it and you listen back to it, there'll be new things that you think about. You might be in a different stage of your career in a year's time, and you're like, okay, cool. I can now apply this to a different area now, and I'm now going to move into this section and really, really I kind of nail it down further there as well. So yeah, just take it in chunks. Like, this industry is not easy. It's super complex. It's, I would say, well, have as we've gone through this, it's kind of designed that way on purpose. It's quite an opaque industry. Um, and hopefully, if anything, I hope that it brings some clarity and just, yeah, discard anything that doesn't serve you and hold on to what does and just really go hard with it.
Yeah, and I love what you say about enjoyment because sometimes we forget about that. You know, it's like part of why I do the Patreon is, you know, it's not always about the grind, but
Yeah.
going back to calm and alignment, um, and really kind of like why we do what we do to begin with.
Yeah.
So thank you for saying that. Yeah, but for people who really do want to get serious and like this is not overwhelming at all, more to come,
Yeah.
because you have follow up books and stuff. Like you have a whole thing that you're doing here. So
Yeah, there's going to be a few volumes of this because
yeah,
it's so difficult. It's really, really difficult. And everything from technology, we're thinking about AI now, like I mentioned before. What does automation mean? What does it mean for my career? And to be honest, a lot of this seems overwhelming because we've got to build the system and the foundation to begin with again, like the actual system that operates your career. That's a lot of work. It is a lot to think about. But there are ways that you can go about that. As once you've got your foundation, the most important thing is once you've got your foundation, you're clear on that in terms of what direction you want to go at, everything becomes like a million times more easier, because it's easy to then say yes and no, and then you can build what serves you,
yeah,
not take all the other noise around you. um and privately, I'm working on things to make this even easier, and various tools and stuff as well to kind of support artists going through this, um uh
amazing.
and yeah, once I've finished that, I'll let you know about it. I'm
I mean,
nearly
this is
there.
amazing. To me, it's like a compass. It's like, and just almost like a, it's like safety net or something. It's just reassurance to me that I have something to reference moving forward at any point in my career, um, that holds the values that I hold also. And you know, I just, it's giving me reassurance that I won't waver from my own moral compass, and yeah, what I'm aligned with, and that might change, um,
Mm.
but ultimately putting ourselves first in what we value, and not letting the industry dictate that, but we ourselves taking charge, and creating the freedom um, by these systems.
Yeah, because ironically, that's what we got into it for to begin with, right? We got in there to be free and be expressive. And then, and it seems like, oh, well,
And then
yes,
we're a
that
prison
is
of
what
the
I got
whole
in there
entire
for.
thing, and then it's like, okay, now how do we? So yeah, these discussions on freedom are just really really great, and again, like I'll use that word empowerment again, because it is really really empowering what you're doing. Knowledge is power, and um, in an environment where a lot of people can feel disempowered, uh, this is probably more systemic of a change than you think. I mean, I think there's a really a level of movement that happens on a deeper level once word gets around and people start to catch on to these types of things. So thank you for that. I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and just deciding to do this. Okay.
Thanks for giving me the
Anything
space.
else, John? Yes, of course. Anything else from you this week, or previews for next week? Anything else from the room?
Not from me. I think
Okay.
we're all set, but I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone
Thank
has.
you. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Oh, sorry about that. Thank you so much, everybody, for somebody's. This is like unscripted. Somebody's like, nobody ever gets mad. This is like a VIP. This is a VIP. What do you call it? Valet section. So nobody's ever. Anyway, I apologize. Thank you so much, everybody in the room. John, thank you so much. For everybody watching the
Thank
replay,
you.
it's artistsblueprint.com. Please visit that. Also, check the comments. We'll put the links there. John, you're on X, fielding questions, on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Also, everybody, MPS at musicianspeersupport.com is the email. Please email me with any kind of questions related to this or anything else that we do at MPS. Also, please join the mailing list if you're not part of it, musicianspeersupport.com/join. We do take donations. Thank you so much for your donations. Please buy John's book. That's one way that you can support John, is buy his book on the website. And also, everybody consider joining our Patreon. We're also celebrating 5 years in January. But in the meantime, we're going to be meeting every single Sunday with John for this lovely series, The Artist's Blueprint. So thank you so much, John. I'm giving it up to you. And
Thank
I
you.
think we can conclude the recording. So special
And
thanks to our MPS team for the recording. Yes, John.
just quickly, and if the book is not appropriate for whatever reason, you can also listen to it as an audiobook version completely for free, and all the workbooks are still available on the website.
Yes.
And all the diagrams. So you have options. So
Yes,
you
you are
don't have
not
to get
obligated.
anything.
Yes, you
Yes,
do
you're not
not have to
obligated.
spend a single dollar in true MPS fashion. You do not have to spend a single dollar to access this information. Um, so yeah, watch out for the podcast, and everything on the website is free as well. But like I said, if you do want to purchase the book, it's not a bad idea, and we thank you for that. Okay,
So with the
so
audio book, do we get to listen to your lovely accent?
Yeah.
I
I don't know about lovely, but the accent is still there.
it's your voice. That's what people want. I hear
And
that.
And also with all the letters and stuff, I will be putting that on the podcast as well, so that it's anything that I basically will be publishing on the website or anywhere else, it will be in audio form somewhere. But I've chosen Apple Podcasts to put it on because it's easier to find on your phone. So
Yeah.
yeah, just type in Artist Blueprint and you'll be able to find it. Listen
Wonderful.
well.
Thank you so much. So yes, Artist's Blueprint, everybody. And just in case you're driving or whatever it is, I'm just going to spell it out for you. It's ARTISTS Blueprint, BLUEPRINT.com. Artistsblueprint.com. Jon Altham is the name, Jon, last name Altham. And I'm Rachel Delgado. Thank you so much for being here. And this will conclude the recording. Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much.